The doors of Paris don't slam loudly, they close in silence, and right now, the silence around Meghan is deafening. Because the question echoing through marble hallways, gilded ateliers, and front row seating charts is no longer whether she wants a Paris comeback, it's whether Paris is quietly refusing to roll out the red carpet again. And the whispers, they're getting louder. This isn't about one invite. This isn't about one runway. This is about reputation, power, image control, and the fragile politics of high fashion. A world where perception is currency and access is everything. Paris Fashion Week is not Hollywood. It doesn't chase headlines. It manufactures mystique. Designers don't beg for celebrities, they curate them. And when a name doesn't appear on a seating chart, people notice, especially when that name is Meghan. Because let's rewind. There was a time when the Duchess narrative was couture gold. Royal adjacency, California glow, transatlantic intrigue, it was branding magic. Designers loved the idea of dressing someone who bridged monarchy and modern celebrity. But fashion has a short memory and an even shorter patience. And lately, the energy feels different. Not dramatic, not explosive, just restrained. Sources inside the fashion circuit have been murmuring about complications, about image alignment, about brand fatigue. No one is saying anything outright. That's not how Paris operates. Instead, it's subtle. A missing invite here, a polite non-response there, a stylist suddenly unavailable, a PIR team quietly pivoting. And the question begins to form, is this coincidence or choreography? Because if Meghan was expected at certain shows and didn't appear, the silence speaks volumes. If her team allegedly made inquiries and the responses were "we're fully booked," that's not rejection, it's something more elegant and far more cutting. It's exclusion wrapped in etiquette. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Fashion houses operate on loyalty. They reward long-term ambassadors, they protect legacy relationships, and they avoid controversy that might overshadow a collection's debut. Paris isn't about drama, it's about dominance. And any personality that risks pulling focus from a designer's moment becomes a liability. So when whispers begin suggesting that some brands are cautious, not hostile, not aggressive, just cautious, it signals a shift, not a ban, not an official statement, but a cooling. And in fashion, cooling is everything. Because let's be honest, Meghan doesn't do small entrances. If she attends, cameras follow. Headlines multiply. Social media erupts. The conversation becomes about her outfit, her body language, her narrative. For some brands, that's priceless. For others, it's distracting. And insiders claim the tension isn't about one single incident. It's about accumulation, about how public perception evolves, about how alliances shift quietly behind velvet ropes. The fashion world doesn't shout its decisions, it edits them. And that's why the phrase "blocked again" feels so provocative. Because was there an attempt? Was there outreach? Were there conversations that didn't materialize into appearances? We don't see the emails. We don't hear the phone calls. But we do see the absence. And absence in Paris is louder than scandal in Hollywood. Now let's talk optics. The Montecito narrative, the streaming projects, the rebranding attempts, all of it feeds into how European fashion houses evaluate risk. Luxury brands are hypersensitive to volatility. They crave timelessness. They worship stability. And when public opinion feels divided, they hesitate. Not because they dislike someone, but because they fear unpredictability. And unpredictability is the one thing couture cannot afford. Here's the twist. The whispers aren't cruel. They're calculated. They're framed as concern, as strategic distancing, as waiting for the right moment. But how many right moments pass before the door quietly locks? Because if there was truly a comeback in motion, stylists coordinating, looks pre-approved, seating placements discussed, and suddenly that momentum stalled, something shifted. And shifts don't happen in Paris without intent. Let's examine timing. Fashion Week is planned months in advance. Guest lists are curated with surgical precision. If Meghan were firmly positioned for a grand return, there would be subtle teasers, brand hints, media breadcrumbs, coordinated press moments. Instead, ambiguity. And ambiguity in this world feels deliberate. Some insiders whisper that certain designers are wary of overshadowing their own debuts. Others allegedly question whether the narrative surrounding Meghan aligns with the new era aesthetic many French houses are embracing: minimalist, heritage-focused, understated power. Because Paris doesn't chase reinvention, it reveres legacy. And Meghan represents reinvention. Now imagine the tension between those two philosophies. You have a figure constantly redefining her public identity, actress, Duchess, humanitarian, media producer, stepping into an industry that prizes consistency and mystique. Is that friction or is that incompatibility? The fashion elite never say it publicly. They smile, they pose, they congratulate, but behind closed doors, brand managers evaluate engagement metrics, controversy ratios, and long-term association value. And if even one influential house signals hesitation, others follow, not out of malice, out of caution. This is how soft exclusion works. No announcement, no statement, just fewer doors opening. And then the headlines begin to speculate. Blocked again? The word again suggests history, suggests prior attempts, suggests momentum that never fully landed. Because there was a time when a Paris appearance would have felt inevitable, when her presence would have electrified front rows. But the fashion ecosystem evolves quickly, and loyalty isn't sentimental, it's strategic. Let's also acknowledge something crucial. Paris doesn't respond to pressure. If there were any perception that a comeback was being positioned as a narrative victory, that alone might cause hesitation. Couture houses refuse to be props in personal rebranding arcs. They want authenticity. They want exclusivity. They want to choose, not be chosen. And perhaps that's the tension simmering beneath these whispers. Was Paris ready, or was Paris resisting? Even more intriguing is how silence amplifies the story. Meghan hasn't addressed anything. Her team hasn't issued clarifications. No brand has denied or confirmed involvement. And in high society circles, silence is rarely accidental, because if everything were smooth, the optics would reflect it. Instead, we have speculation swirling through fashion forums, influencer commentary dissecting seating charts, stylists posting cryptic captions about alignment. Coincidence? Maybe. But fashion thrives on coded language. And right now, the code feels chilly. There's also the transatlantic factor. American celebrity culture rewards bold visibility. European luxury culture rewards restraint. Navigating both requires precision. One miscalculation, even perceived, can tilt balance. So when insiders hint that certain French houses are taking a wait-and-see approach, that phrase carries weight. It means doors aren't slammed, but they're not wide open either. And that's where tension builds, because a comeback thrives on momentum, and momentum thrives on access. If access stalls, the narrative shifts from triumphant return to hesitant re-entry. And in an industry built on perception, that shift can redefine everything. Now imagine the internal pressure, expectations, planning, anticipation. If there truly was a Paris strategy in motion and it encountered unexpected friction, that creates ripple effects. Stylists pivot, PR recalibrates, brand partnerships get reevaluated, and the whispers intensify. Is it temporary? Is it strategic distancing? Or is Paris quietly signaling something bigger? No official ban exists. No formal rejection has been declared. But sometimes what isn't said shapes the loudest narrative, because fashion doesn't exile dramatically. It freezes elegantly. And right now, the temperature feels noticeably lower. The comeback that was supposed to shimmer now hangs in limbo. Is it delayed or denied? That's the question echoing across runways and champagne receptions, and this is only the beginning, because here's where the story stops being about invitations and starts becoming about influence. In Paris, relevance isn't loud. It's confirmed through proximity. Who sits front row? Who gets dressed first? Who receives private atelier fittings long before a collection hits the runway? And when proximity changes, people talk. The fashion world doesn't blacklist, it recalibrates. And if Meghan's Paris comeback truly encountered resistance, subtle, polished, impossibly polite resistance, then what we're witnessing isn't chaos, it's containment. Containment of narrative, containment of attention, containment of unpredictability. There's an unspoken hierarchy at Fashion Week. Royalty, legacy actresses, fashion muses, billionaire heiresses, each occupies a tier. Movement between tiers isn't automatic. It requires endorsement, alignment, mutual benefit. So when whispers intensify, they usually circle around one thing: alignment. Does Meghan align with where Paris is heading right now? Because fashion is cyclical, but prestige is selective. And lately, French houses have been leaning into heritage messaging, archival silhouettes, restrained palettes, old money aesthetic dominance. The mood is quiet power. Meghan's brand, however, has been in flux. Reinvention after reinvention. New projects teased, partnerships recalculated, calculated. Public perception shifting with every headline. To some brands, reinvention signals dynamism. To others, it signals instability. And instability is Couture's worst nightmare. Imagine a scenario where stylists reach out discreetly, exploring collaboration possibilities. Perhaps fittings were tentatively discussed. Perhaps brand ambassadors were evaluated. And then hesitation creeps in. Not rejection, hesitation. Because luxury houses operate like diplomatic governments. Every association carries geopolitical weight. If even one powerhouse maison expresses reluctance, others observe. Nobody wants to be the outlier. So the whispers multiply. Maybe next season. Timing isn't ideal. We're prioritizing long-term ambassadors, polite phrases, razor-sharp implications, and suddenly the comeback isn't a triumphant return, it's a negotiation. What makes this situation even more fascinating is the power dynamic. Once upon a time, royal association was unshakable currency in European fashion. Titles opened doors automatically. But when that title becomes layered with controversy, autonomy, and independence from the institution that granted it, the equation changes. Because Paris doesn't just care about fame, it cares about institutional stability. Some insiders allegedly fear unpredictability, not in behavior, but in headlines. A single overshadowing controversy during Fashion Week could eclipse months of creative labor. And designers are territorial about their moment. They don't share spotlight easily. So if there was concern that Meghan's presence would dominate press cycles beyond the garments themselves, that alone might spark strategic distancing. But here's where it becomes explosive. Silence from her camp. No triumphant see you in Paris. No candid backstage glimpses. No coordinated teaser outfits. Just ambiguity. And ambiguity breeds suspicion. Was the comeback ever confirmed, or was it aspirational? Because in fashion, aspiration without confirmation can look like overreach. And Paris punishes perceived overreach with silence. The phrase blocked again carries emotional charge because it implies repetition. It suggests previous momentum that failed to materialize. If insiders are right, and that's always the operative phrase in gossip, then perhaps this wasn't the first cooling. Perhaps prior seasons saw similar friction, subtle scheduling conflicts, missed opportunities, delayed confirmations, a pattern forming quietly beneath glossy headlines. Patterns are what make fashion insiders nervous, and nervous insiders talk. They talk over champagne flutes in private lounges. They talk in stylist group chats. They talk in coded Instagram captions. And once that chatter hits public ears, it transforms from private caution into public narrative. Let's not forget the transatlantic optics again. Hollywood rewards reinvention arcs. Paris rewards continuity. If Meghan's brand is still stabilizing after multiple pivots, media ventures, lifestyle launches, philanthropic repositioning, European houses might simply be waiting for consistency, waiting for a calmer headline cycle, waiting for certainty, because couture houses invest in long-term storytelling. They want ambassadors who feel permanent, not transitional. So if the fashion world whispers are true, perhaps the comeback isn't denied, it's postponed indefinitely, which in fashion language can mean the same thing. There's also another layer, power alliances. Major fashion houses maintain tight relationships with certain royal circles, legacy institutions, and long-standing European figures. Navigating that landscape requires delicate diplomacy. If even a perception exists that inviting Meghan might strain those alliances, some brands might hesitate, not out of hostility, out of preservation. And preservation always wins in Paris. Meanwhile, online speculation escalates. Influencers dissect who was present at private dinners. Fashion journalists note who received custom fittings. Observers question why certain front row regulars returned while Meghan did not. Absence becomes evidence, even if it isn't. And that's the cruel magic of high society gossip. Perception often outweighs proof. Now imagine the emotional undertone. If a comeback was strategically mapped out, timing aligned with a broader brand refresh, encountering unexpected friction could feel personal. Not because Paris banned her, but because doors that once felt accessible suddenly feel conditional. Conditional access stings more than outright rejection. At least rejection is clear. Conditionals keep you guessing, and guessing fuels whispers. Let's be honest, if Paris truly wanted to shut the door dramatically, we would know. There would be statements, leaks, open tensions. Instead, we have fog, and fog is deliberate. Fog protects reputations while reshaping dynamics. So, what happens next? Either Meghan doubles down, recalibrates, aligns with a specific powerhouse brand willing to champion her presence boldly, or she pivots entirely, strengthening American luxury alliances instead. Because fashion loyalty is rarely emotional, it's transactional. If Paris hesitates, New York compensates. If French houses stall, Italian designers might seize opportunity. But Paris remains the crown jewel. And a Paris comeback carries symbolic weight that no other city replicates, which is why these whispers matter, because they suggest vulnerability. Not exile, not banishment, but vulnerability in access. And in elite circles, vulnerability is leverage. Will Meghan re-enter Paris on her own terms, defying speculation and reclaiming front row dominance? Or will the whispers crystallize into quiet consensus that the fashion world prefers distance? Right now, the temperature remains cool. No official exclusion, no triumphant confirmation, just intensified murmurs. And in Paris, murmurs shape destiny, because Couture doesn't shout, it signals. And the signal right now is complicated. The comeback isn't dead, but it isn't secure. And until a definitive appearance resets the narrative, the question will linger: was she blocked, or was Paris simply choosing its moment? Either way, the fashion world is watching, and so is everyone else. And so is everyone else. And so is everyone else. And so is everyone else.